What's up, everybody? We got this is Pardon the I can't even remember. This is Pardon the POV, where you have two founders that come together and talk sales. How is my favorite trader doing, Crispy, on the other side? How you doing?
I'm doing well. It feels
Feels good to put a knife in someone's back.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what I did. Yeah. So yes.
It's a joke, everybody. I love Crispy. He loves me. He didn't give me a knife. He kissed me before he left. So I'll be clear about this.
Yeah. The Rizzler.
Romantic night. Okay, getting in this. So I'll pass it to, since I'm not actually reading these questions, we are 100% ready for whatever Rob Michael Jones is going to throw our way. I am not a troll. I have real answers before Crispy tries to smear my name. Let's go.
Thanks, Matt. Bonus question directly to Mr. Crispy. Now that you're outside of the org, I feel like this response would have more validity. Do you still use Super? Is it as advertised? How good is it? How are you finding it in your new role?
Yeah, it's interesting in the sense of I find that it's
that's a yes no question, Crispy.
That wasn't a yes no question.
It
was open-ended.
Is it better or worse than advertised?
It's better than advertised. It's more like it's more utilized than what I thought it would be. So I find that it's a lot like Loom, where I can't work without it, where like I have to use Loom, I have to use Slack to do my job, right? Super's right there with keeping myself accountable with running my process board each day. And it's actually, that utility has also enabled me to do mass data cleanup within the business like now, which is cool. So like I didn't have to go and spend money to deduplicate things. I ran a process board that flagged duplicates or missing data points, and I had the reps go fill them in, and we did 1,000 records in 30 minutes, which is pretty cool. So solved data like compliance issues and taught the reps how to do the right thing every time. So 2 birds, 1 stone. I did not expect that with like this journey.
A lot of utility. Matt muted himself, so we'll go right into the first question. Question 1 today: is attribution fake, or can it actually be measured? Is it fake? Can it be measured, or will someone troll? 3, 2, 1.
Wait. Are you saying you're A or B? Okay,
yeah.
Got it. A, I think so.
Hey.
Fake.
So attribution is best optimized under the assumption that it's fake. And the reason I think that is attribution has a misappropriated causality. And I'll get to this is there is a there's impact, right? How many MQLs have I generated? We try to say I have gone to inbound and that person went to inbound and they now converted because we did an event. And that logic is completely and utterly flawed because they may have seen us on LinkedIn, they may have seen us somewhere else, and the conversion path is different from the capture path, and attribute is almost always by conversion path. So you must decouple those. So I find it as a best practice in a sales and marketing or in a company to just decouple attribution. Attribution is used not as a metric to organize around, but only to like see where the wind's going. It is not something to organize around.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that there's a couple of things that attribute to this. One is word of mouth is the ultimate marketing channel, and you can't really measure that ultimately as attribution. Number 2 is experiences that create lasting impact, like inbound. So like an example is someone DM'd me on LinkedIn last week and said like, hey, you give a roast to me at inbound. It's like, it's impossible to attribute that entire deal experience or whatever it is back to inbound or something like that, because there's been so many other touch points along the way. And so, yeah, attribution is theater is my answer.
Very good. I am moving on to question 2 with no thoughts since I'm not paid to have an opinion. Number 2, will HubSpot actually ever make it upmarket? You can define upmarket however you want, enterprise. So A, yes it will. B, no it won't. 3, 2, 1.
A.
B.
Crispy, we'll start with you this time.
You're supposed to answer at the same time, Crispy.
I did say on the
there's what's written on this document and there's what Robert said.
Yeah, that's what I was
which
thinking
are
as
not
well.
the same. A is HubSpot. It will go up market. B is it's not going to. So I think you meant to say A.
No, I meant that it's stuck in SMB land. That it's not going up market. That's my thought.
It will never make it up market.
No, here's why.
Remember to
HubSpot
ping
will
us,
have to-
Robert. Ping us because Crispy, we both like to talk too long.
Okay.
HubSpot will have to overcome a massive mantra that they've created to date, which is crafted, not cobbled. And the idea, the competitive advantage they have over Salesforce is you don't need an admin on staff to maintain it, is like one of the compelling things. So in order for them to go up market, enterprise sector, stuff like that, you have to have a cobbled tech stack because you don't have a choice at that point because you have IT regulations, other systems of like homegrown things that need to be integrated. And so you can't really be crafted at that level. And HubSpot will have to change the narrative and how they have gone to market massively in order to make that happen. And Salesforce is just too big, is the answer.
I will tell Crispy that. So the question is, will HubSpot ever actually go up market? And there is, I just got off a customer that has 300 sales reps that's using Super, that has on staff 2 HubSpot admins, 1 sales trainer, and a director of demand gen that's HubSpot, which is by definition up market. By definition, they have changed how they're going to market, but they're not selling against admins in the same way. So they're already there. The question is, how fast are they going to do it? Not if they will. Period.
One customer doesn't sway me. I think it's very unique. I've been in partner land many times, and I don't see very many accounts of 300 sales teams, 300 person sales teams using HubSpot.
Sounds to me like you're just jealous of the people that got them Bear accounts. But don't get angry if they exist. I just talked to another account over my friends over at Banana and EMEA, and they are working a 300 plus rep deal right now to get HubSpot on it. So HubSpot's already going up market. The question is how fast, not if.
Right? Yeah.
My 2 cents would be that no one until 2021-ish thought they'd be a CRM at all. So TBD. We're skipping and going Hubolution, baby. Non-compete with Salesforce ended, and they were able to move into that and start developing products that actually allowed them to facilitate themselves and market themselves as a CRM.
Yep, little known fact, HubSpot in 2021 had a non-compete where they couldn't use the word CRM, and they were a Salesforce customer. And so when that ended, they violently attacked Salesforce, and we are now living in the post non-disclosure world.
Excellent. Glad I could facilitate a little bit of value there. Moving to question 5. Question 5. Are MEDDICC and Spice the best sales methodologies? This is an odd one. So A, MEDDICC and Spice are not important. They're over-engineered. B, MEDDICC is best. Without it, you're winging. You can also add another option here, introducing a little bit of chaos. 3, 2, 1.
A.
Matt, we'll start with you.
I've started all of them. I love it. Option A is because self methodologies are important. This is saying that they are the best, MEDDICC and Spiced. I think they're very helpful. I think you should have one. The question is whether or not you have a expectation and a base level of expectations. And I like to think as not sales methodologies, but does your sales team have an expectation which they're being held to? Do they know how to qualify deals? And it does not have to be MEDDICC. It does not have to be Spiced. You just need a process that follows salespeople as they execute. Period. The thought or the conversation between MEDDICC and Spice is it's just a false conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like, I think that it's, my problem with it is that if you are, and I think about like my Super experience mainly with this, is we didn't really have a sales methodology that we use for qualifying people, like period. We qualified with our own methodology, which was way more impactful because that's why our sales experience was better. And so MEDDICC and Spice are like good things to use as foundational things, but ultimately your sales methodology should reflect the situation that your lead experiences, how you help, all that kind of stuff, and collect the right data points. And that differs by industry, offering, solution, stuff like that. So I wouldn't go all in on MEDDICC and Spice. It needs to be mega tailored towards your own sales process and product or service.
Sales methodologies are like buttholes. Everybody has one and you need one. So if you don't have one, MEDDICC and Spice are good things to think about.
Just taking a moment to clip that part of the video. Stand by. Skipping one other one. We've talked about this before, but like any good evangelist, repeating the message is part of the charge and the mission. So, number 7, should sales training just be deleted altogether? Option A, sales training is a waste. Option B, bad training is a waste, but there is good training that helps win deals. 3, 2, 1.
B.
Ooh, Crispy, you're up.
Yeah, it's and I have validated this experience in the past couple of days with a couple of customers, and then like our own business. Sales training is just so heavy front loaded with how it's done that it's not actually impactful, and they retain 10% of the information. And I don't think the solution is do a different style of training, stuff like that. And this is like part of the reason why I left Super and I'm going to go build a business around it, is because it's not even training anymore. It's enablement in the best way, where it's go and deep dive into the pipeline and follow the process because it's reflected in the flow of work. That's the best possible thing you can do. And I don't classify that as training. That's repetition of practice. That's not like, we're going to do this for 90 days and then you're off to the races. It's constantly doing the right thing every single time when it matters.
I agree with Crispy, but I'm gonna make him agree with me. Crispy, when you were an elite professional soccer player and you went out in the field to get ready for the game, what did you call it?
I mean, yeah, it's called training.
Okay, and then what did you do during that training?
Repetition.
We have misdefined what training is, and we have buffoons that are loud and charismatic that try to motivate people to do the right things, and we call it training. That's wrong. What Super is saying, hey, this is word enablement, training. We just have misdefined it, executed it. We're getting back to the basics in a way that is new, we haven't done before, so that we can train like elite athletes in our sales process. So yes, training is not a waste. How we've done training in the past is a complete and utter waste, and you can do it with a lot lower effort and have a lot higher impact. So
I agree with you. Yeah, I think that I have a problem with it is that training is very much definitive start and end, and that's the problem, which is like you have to confine this giant amount of information into a 90-day window, and it results in this little bit that gets remembered. That's the big problem.
You just went in, and we may even end here. It's just and this is an insight. I think the way we thought about training has starts and ends, which you said, and I hadn't thought about. There's start and end date. And real training is an ongoing, forever process. And so when you look at elite athletes, they don't stop training because they're veterans. No, they show their butts up. They bring the people, the new guys. They force them to get into the training system. And it's this idea that I'm a 10-year rep, I don't need something. That's because we've never actually had good training that gets reps in, that holds a standard. And if a veteran doesn't show up for, like, we have the Baltimore Ravens that have, who's that guy? Who's their quarterback? Lamar Jackson starts not showing up to practice. The head coach ends up getting flagged. There is issues when your veterans don't show up and the head coach. There will start to be issues, and it will result in something, which the head coach got fired. Training matters, and tenured reps better show up for it. That's what Super.
We're talking about practice.
Yeah.
We can do one more as an aside, since this won't make the clips or cut. The metaphor of training and off season and there not being a defined start and end state is really good. I think to amplify that and make it a little bit better is what happens when the season ends. Maybe for a week, people go on a vacation, but then they start off season training. And it looks very different in how they train and the volume and what their focus is than during the season. Do you think athletes train during the season? Yes, but it's more focused on rest, recovery, like mental exercises, that type of stuff. So training, to your point, Matt, ongoing, doesn't end, no defined start and end time. But the way in which you do it differs based on the need in the season.
The question is, are you an athlete? So are you a sales professional that's getting good at the craft? Then you're always training.
Yeah, exactly.
And like if you're running a deal cycle, then you have a certain standard you hold yourself to, and infrastructure that helps you execute that is net good. That's what training should do. Put the reps in, get better.
Last one. We actually are going to make it through this on time today, which is great. And this is a good question. Number 8. Forecasting is just organized lying. A, every forecast is fiction. B, forecasting discipline actually does build predictability. 3, 2, 1.
B.
Oh, I don't know what I'm gonna say. I will say B.
Matt,
I'll go first. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Somebody take it. Matt, go ahead.
I will go first. Forecasting is organized lying. And so the way this question is asked, I'm going to say it clearly, but you can get better at lying. We don't want to say this, like it's organized lying. But being able to know what's true and what's not, be able to to say something's true, matters a lot. And discipline allows you to understand the indicators and the signals of whether something's going to close. And discipline lets you say that. And we must, as an organization, I must put a team together, and I must be able to predict they're not going to let goals they're not going to concede goals, and they're going to score goals. And I need to be able to predict how it's going to happen and have a playbook to execute on it. And so like organizing and having discipline for that allows that to occur. So when I hear Crispy say, I have a commit and only 50% of those close, but I have Robert who says I have a commit, and every single time he says that, it always closes. That matters a lot, and be able to trust who's saying that.
Yeah. I think forecasting is a really misunderstood concept and methodology, partly because of people in our ecosystem that work in HubSpot. I would often see customers get confused with like, what's the difference between deal probability and forecast probability? And it's like, that's a good question. Like, I don't know why there's two different ones. Is it based upon gut feeling and data? And that's the distinction between them. And like credit to Bolian on this one, honestly. I think you do forecasting in the most unique and effective way that I've ever seen, where you have like the good, better, best modeling out of like the 70%, 40, 10, or whatever brackets you want to pull in. That to me is the best because it tells a journey of like, here's best case scenario, most likely scenario, and then like worst case scenario. Because that's ultimately what you want to see with forecasting is that decision, not what number are we going to hit. It's this is likely, this is unlikely, this is like probably what we're going to.
Yeah, to go a bit further, so conceptually, there's this idea of here's a bucket of water, and the question is how much of that water is going to get poured into the other bucket, and we're trying to squeeze out. You're trying to get all of it over. So if you start the month with $30,000, then I can say, okay, well I know that's enough pipeline coverage to squeeze out a certain amount. So that's really the question you're trying to answer, and we can do a whole forecasting show another day.
Chances of that happening 100% in the forecast. Matt, close us out. Crispy, miss you, buddy.
Well, everybody, thank you for your time. One question we like to do. Crispy, what shampoo do you use? Because your hair looks great.
Head and Shoulders. Head and Shoulders.
Guys, please, we are head and shoulders above everyone else in sales training if you use Super. So stay awesome, keep doing it big.
Sponsor me, Head and Shoulders.
Stop believing. Adios, everybody.